Hello everyone and welcome to the Healthy You Virtual Festival. My name's Dan Godward and I'm the Healthy Lifestyles Coordinator for the Active Lifestyles team at Hunts District Council. And today I'm going to do a presentation on physical activity and thinking outside the box. So before we get started with the talk, just for a bit of background, I've been with the council for the last 5.5 years, and my role currently as the Healthy You Tier 1 coordinator is to signpost and provide opportunities for both physical activity and healthy eating to the more inactive residents within the district, and create opportunities for them to become more active. But the structure of today's talk, we're going to look at what physical activity is, the benefits of physical activity and intensity, looking at to understand why physical inactivity matters, thoughtful activity, and then physical activity recommendations and a summary to close. So what is physical activity? So physical activity is any bodily movement that works your muscles and requires more energy than resting. So on the screen is an infographic showcasing the UK Chief Medical Officer's recommended guidelines for activities for adults' activity levels for the week. So it's recommended that adults aim for at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise, or at least 75 minutes of vigorous activity, or the combination of both. So this doesn't have to be all at once. It can be spread out during the duration of your week, which hopefully helps it become a lot more manageable. So for example, if you take 5 days of the week and were to do 30 minutes a day, or even 2 blocks of 15 minutes, so that might mean potentially just going for a walk before and after work, for example, and those little contributions would all add up to total that magic 150 minutes as a minimum, really. So aerobic physical activity helps to protect and maintain heart, lung and circulatory health, thereby reducing your risk of ill health as well as enhancing your mental state and well-being and helping you to maintain a healthy bodily weight. So just have a think about whether you meet the recommended guidelines and consider how you could make little tweaks to your routine to improve this. Something that is often understated is the importance of strength work. So resistance work is vital to maintain muscle, bone and joint strength to help you carry out daily living activities. This is even more relevant when we think of older adults, whereby muscle mass does deteriorate. So actually it's really important to help maintain independence and functionality by incorporating some just general body strengthening exercises potentially, and trying not to neglect that. So strength work also helps to regulate blood sugar and blood pressure levels, and also as well helps us maintain a healthy weight. Muscle strengthening activities may sound like they have to be intense, but they can actually be focused on improving flexibility and mobility in your muscles as well, which also helps contribute towards the recommended guidelines. The general theory is that if you start off slow and steady at a pace that you feel comfortable with, you can then gradually progress that intensity over time, and that will then help contribute towards greater benefits, be that strength and mobility. Some of our recent projects as a team have focused on frailty, and as we touched on briefly a minute ago, emphasizing the importance of resistance activities into your sort of daily routine is vital, not only for the strength benefits, but also to help with balance and coordination as well. So if you are starting to feel like you potentially are becoming slightly frailer or a little unsteady on your feet, actually you don't want to neglect sort of balance and strength-based movements. You want to probably incorporate them more into your routine. And this can be done by just sort of doing maybe sit to stands from the chair, little toe raises while you're making a cup of tea. But don't be afraid of that feeling of wobbliness when you're trying to improve your balance. That is actually where those strength benefits will come from. So the benefits of physical activity. Research shows there are numerous benefits of physical activity, of which I've kind of grouped them into three categories. So the physiological, the psychological, and the social benefits. First off, if we look physiologically, physical activity helps lower blood pressure, improves bone and muscular strength, as well as aerobic capacity, amongst other things. And there is evidence to showcase that actually there is a 20 to 30% lower risk of getting CVD, coronary heart disease, and strokes if you were to incorporate just physical activity into your daily routine. Alongside those I've just listed on the screen, you can also see it helps to strengthen the bones and muscles, which we've just talked about, helps to manage weight, as well as sort of reduce the risk of other long-term health conditions, such as diabetes and cancer. Exercise also has known psychological benefits, including reducing levels of depression, stress, and anxiety. But not only this, you can actually see some quite immediate short-term benefits, including quality of sleep and sort of improved energy levels, which then help contribute to greater confidence and improved mood. So they're more likely to be the more immediate effects of physical activity and kind of those psychological benefits, which are maybe not often as prominent in your thinking when you are to understand the benefits of exercise straight away. So not only does physical activity contribute to greater physiological and psychological benefits, you can also get the huge social benefits as well. So it encourages sociability and reassures autonomy and integration. And actually, if you are able to find an activity that you can do with a friend or a family member, it's way more likely to increase your accountability to continuing and motivating yourself to sustain that improved activity level. So it's not just the physical benefits you'll be getting, it's that greater social interaction, which is huge, and helps you regain a sense of control during sort of potential periods of uncertainty in your life. And also it gives you the added benefits of getting up and out and about from behind your desks if you're still working. Activity intensity. So when undertaking physical activity, it is important to consider the intensity you are working at. So the figure on the screen shows the varying intensities of activities using everyday examples of life activities, I suppose. So a lot of evidence is available to demonstrate that reducing sedentary behavior is important. So it's crucial to remember that it's impossible to reduce sedentary behavior to zero, to nothing. But the value of moving often is important. And a lot of research is now coming out to show that little and often method is way more effective than potentially just doing one longer bout of activity in a day. So potentially, if you have a smartwatch, this is maybe one of the reasons it buzzes you and gives you the message to tell you to get up because you've potentially been seated for too long. So that may mean just it's a great excuse to go and make that next coffee. So research also shows that overall, as a person moves more in general and reduces sitting time, that all helps to reduce all-cause mortality risks. So actually, again, just that whole concept of being active more often, more regularly, is way more effective to actually help reduce that sort of all-cause mortality. Again, so rather than that kind of sedentary behavior of just being seated for a lot of the time. As we progress through the continuum, we then find ourselves looking at mild activity. So that can be measured by the feeling of warmth after activities. So I've given the example of walking on the screen. If you think back to the government guidance, it's recommended that adults should get 150 minutes of moderate activity a week. So if you were to walk 5 times a week for 30 minutes, and potentially even 2 bouts of 15 within a day, that would help you to achieve that target. So just bear in mind when you are implementing some mild activity into your routine that your breathing rate and heart rates will increase slightly. So the next level on the continuum is moderate activity, and then vigorous activity. And they can be differentiated by the talk test. So being able to talk but slightly breathless when exercising or doing some physical activity indicates you're working at a moderate intensity. But then if you are having difficulty talking without pausing, it's a sign of vigorous activity. So if we then break down the moderate examples, that's potentially things like dancing, swimming, and cycling. And again, you get that feeling of warmth, but even greater than when just walking potentially, and you might start to sweat as well. That will then also be reflected in your breathing patterns and pulse rate as they increase too. But although you may be slightly breathless when trying to hold a conversation, you should still be able to talk. But then when you compare that to vigorous examples such as playing sports, your breath starts to shorten quite drastically. You have a higher pulse rate again and a greater feeling of warmth. So various vigorous physical activity performed in short bursts can be interspersed with rest or lower activity or lower intensity activities. But sometimes, and this is often known as kind of HIIT training, so high intensity interval training. So short, sharp bursts of really high intensity to get your breathing rates up drastically, feeling like you're exerting as much as you possibly can, followed by a period of short rest, just to give you a chance to catch your breath. And there's sort of lots of research and data showing that this can also bring numerous health benefits, and even potentially suggesting there's far greater ranges of health benefits physiologically by doing this kind of training, but it's important to factor in your fitness levels and any conditions you potentially may be working with. So just looking at that continuum again on the screen, it's important to remember that movement throughout the day is key, and thus your intensity will constantly vary. Your body adapts incredibly well to movement, and actually in order to build those neurological pathways and develop your ability levels, it's important to constantly vary what you do, because your body then kind of just gets used to its normal routine. So you need to constantly challenge the norm. So why does physical inactivity matter? Physical inactivity is one of the leading risk factors for non-communicable diseases and death worldwide. It increases the risk of cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes by 20 to 30%. It's been recorded that physical inactivity in the UK costs around 7.4 billion per year, and in Cambridgeshire alone, the cost is nearly £10 million on the health system. So it's therefore important to consider the impacts of sort of improvements in physical activity and the knock-ons that could potentially have on our healthcare system. And this is where sort of roles like mine are important, and hopefully other sort of mechanisms and sort of services to help the effectiveness of relevant signposting and making that available to residents and patients to ensure they are recommended suitable health and wellbeing programs, to obviously not only support themselves but the broader impact to the whole system as in general. So just by touching on the sort of impact of inactivity, that leads us nicely onto the importance of improving physical activity levels, and then that concept of thinking outside the box. So the goal is to change people's behaviours, and for long-term changes there needs to be some motivators, And actually, that needs to come from that individual as well. It's unlikely to be sustained in the long term if the individual isn't motivated and accountable to themselves. And that kind of whole concept of behavioral change needs to come from them. But to give you some potential ideas about how you can improve your physical activity levels and maybe doing it in a more thoughtful manner, first off, you can think about your local communities. So physical activity should be viewed as a fun family experience when everyone plays, moves and laughs together instead of being viewed as separate activities. So that may give you a great opportunity to reach out and explore activities going on in your local communities. That may be things such as walk programs, couch to 5K schemes, park runs, sports, and many more. And there's a huge range of activities, and none more so than in each district, that are all contributing towards the Healthy You Virtual Festival within Cambridgeshire. But even if you were to break that down on a more simplistic level, is there maybe the opportunity to walk or cycle to things in your village rather than driving? And that will all contribute to a greater step count as well. So the second consideration are barriers to activity. So finding activities you enjoy is important, as this will lead to long-term sustainability. That may mean going with a family member or friend, which helps with your accountability. There's a lot of costs as a consideration, and there's a lot of funded programs at low cost or no cost available in the in each district. So it's actually just trying to find activities that maybe aren't sort of promoted as mainstream, but a lot of the work that the district councils do as part of this festival and the coordinators put together are sort of low cost, no cost activities, trying to encourage and improve the activity levels of residents within each district, and by hopefully giving opportunities to maybe new exercise that you've not done before or activities you've maybe not done in a long time. So the third consideration is the reminder that missing a session doesn't mean you've fallen off the wagon. It's important to remember things do get in the way sometimes, and this may even include sort of other chores within the day that you wouldn't maybe recognize as exercise but could still be counted as activity. So try and, instead of getting frustrated, remember it is more about the cumulative activity over the week, and all those individual contributions that will have the greater impact rather than that one individual session. So the next point is to seek opportunities to move more. So we've already touched on the example of smartwatches buzzing you if you've been sat down for too long. Potentially you might want to do some calf raises while you're making a cup of tea or brushing your teeth. There's the opportunity to do sit to stands from the chair in between the adverts on telly. It might be a case of choosing the stairs rather than the escalators, and that's a huge one where possible. If we're looking to be more festive given the time of year, again, it might be having gone on Christmas Santa walks, or if it gets to Halloween, go pumpkin spotting around your local area. It's all about trying to find ways to increase your step count and spend more time outdoors. But the main message really is to remember that whether it's a small bout or a large bout of movement, it's always trying to break up those long periods of sedentary seated behavior, which will help contribute to your overall improved fitness levels. So on the screen again, you can just see some activities that the Healthy You service kind of contribute, which is what all the district coordinators support. So there are a tier 2 adult weight management service. There's the NHS health checks, which is applicable for certain individuals that you may want to check the criteria. Healthy You have their health trainers as well. Within Huntingdonshire, which is my district, we have a lot of health and wellbeing programs. Often a lot of these are funded, so free to attend with extra incentives as well if you're eligible. We have 12-week individualized prescribed programs for those with medical conditions that can get referred from their health practitioners, called the exercise referral scheme. We have free health wellbeing walks in the district, so we have a lot of those around the big market towns. So they're weekly walks led by volunteers. Our team also deliver walking sports and long-term health and condition classes, as well as older adult right start classes too. And then we have our low cost, no cost sort of concessionary undefeatables and healthy you schemes. And a lot of these services are available to Cambridgeshire residents. So there's a lot of information on this page as well if you ever need anything. So I hope that's been useful, and I hope you make the use of all the other workshops that are going to be available for the rest of the month as part of the Healthy You Virtual Festival.